Hello, Peppers. This is Pep. I am Chaz Licciardello from Planet America, which is on Friday nights on News 24, which you can watch on iView if you want. Hey, why not?
Can you watch that outside of Australia, or are there territorial blocks on it?
Yes, there are not territorial blocks.
There you go.
They asked me permission to.
That really makes up for the government completely gutting Radio Australia, doesn't it?
On that cheery note, this is Dr. Dave. Tell us who you are.
I am
Dr.
from
Dave.
the University of Sydney.
He's also from the University of Sunshine, as you can see from that call just then. Yes, and if you want to watch the Planet America TV show, which I will be referring to a couple of times during this this podcast, you can see it on Facebook or on iView, and you can see this video on YouTube as well. That will do.
He'll be referring to it. It's what we call an intertextual experience.
Now, first of all, I'm going to start doing housekeeping like I have been doing recently. 2 days ago, I did a...
Hang on, when I begin my lectures with just a bit of housekeeping, it's like a reminder that your assignment is due at 11:59 p.m.
That's exactly what I'm about to do. They need to know when their assignment is due.
Okay.
No more slackers, Peppers.
Yeah, okay. What assignments have we got then?
Well, one of the assignments I set on Wednesday with Bill Wyman, which you should, if you don't...
I wasn't even aware that you were doing this.
If you're like Dr. Dave and you didn't know, you should go back and listen to it, because it's actually a pretty good podcast.
I'm sure it is.
That Bill offered a lot of really good thoughts, and I offered one or two. So, go back and have a listen to that. But one of the things that we did there was I showed him a Ben Garrison cartoon and asked him and the listeners there's this cartoon here, and there's this strange woke Disney experience, and it featured Mickey Mouse punching out Donald Duck for reasons that were not clear at all. And it featured an Illuminati triangle as one of the rides as well. Of
course.
And Snow White was in fear, cowering in fear from Mickey Mouse's rage, his woke rage.
Yes.
And there was a dwarf behind her saying, "We would never say the M word." And I asked the listeners, what do you think the M word is? Can you mind read Ben Garrison?
Is this that Donald Duck is supposed to have called Mickey Mouse a mouse or something?
You know what? A lot of people guessed that, and a lot of people were right.
Oh, okay.
I am sorry to say, Dr. Dave, that you think like Ben Garrison.
Oh, my God.
That is the worst possible insult. The M word, this is a quote from Ben Garrison when someone asked him, "What's the M word?" He said, "The M word is, of course, mouse. Parallels the N word. My feeble attempt at humour." So at least he's self-aware.
Yeah, it's great when he has these cartoons with so many labels in them, making everything so incredibly obvious, and yet it still needs to be explained to his own fans.
Well, as I said, some of the Peppers are obviously fluent in Garrisonese, because a lot of people guessed mouse. Some people guessed mulatto, some people guessed male. Like Bill guessed MAGA, which I thought wasn't a bad guess.
Oh, yeah. Not a bad guess at all.
It's mouse.
Oh,
it was
God,
mouse.
That's depressing that I understand this. I've been mired in this world for far too long.
I'm going to make you feel better, Dr. Dave. I'm going to make you feel better by wiping your memory of everything you have ever known before. Because about last week,
Yes.
it feels like months ago, I made a reference to swordfish, which you clearly had no idea what I was talking
No,
about.
I had no idea what you were talking. I enjoyed it.
And when the Peppers in the comments did say Dr. Dave might have been a lot funnier if Dr. Dave had a clue what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it just struck me that a lot of people wouldn't have known, because it was literally a movie from 1999. So that's 20 years now. That's a long time ago. But it is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, as in unintentionally funny movies.
Yeah.
This John Travolta, Hugh Jackman hack fest, right? And it was a hack fest in more ways than one.
Yeah.
It's and it features two very famous scenes if you're into shit movies.
Yeah.
About how they tried to depict hacking on a film in sort of early internet era to try and make it seem interesting. And one way was to get Hugh Jackman to have to hack. John Travolta literally said that it takes the best hackers in the world 60 minutes to perform this hack. You have 1 minute. You have to be 60 times better than the best hackers in the world. There's some competition or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the way he motivated him was by holding a gun to his head and getting someone to give him a blowjob during that 60 seconds at the same time.
I remember you told me this last week.
That was one scene. The other scene involved him hacking, and there's no one else in the room. It was just him hacking. So they had to try and make it interesting.
Yeah.
And the way they tried to make it interesting was by visualizing his hacking by showing a cube with vertices popping up when he completed a stage of hacking.
I remember there was a movie from about 1996 called Hackers.
Yes. This was much worse than that.
I never saw it.
No, that was actually not bad. This was much worse.
Did it have accurate visual representations of hacking?
It wasn't really that kind of hacking. It was. This one was much more like we think of as hacking, but much worse a movie. Anyway, my point is, I'm going to put both clips up in the homework.
Jesus.
So you, Dr. Dave, and everyone at home,
I will not be doing.
You must go and watch these things. Honestly, you will thank me after you watch these things.
By the way, a couple of days ago, I was talking to a school audience, and I veered off on a tangent into the Colonial Pipeline because it is one of the funniest things that's happened in recent weeks, and we've talked about how comically small the ransom was. And I was about to say, it's like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers. Then I sort of looked out on this audience of school children and realised that movie is 25 years old.
Yeah, I know.
That would have been like someone coming to my school and say, "Oh, well, that great movie, The Sting." Remember? Yeah. But actually, some of them had seen it. Because in the end, I couldn't come up with a substitute metaphor.
Well, that makes me feel slightly less old, so that's great. Now, having said that, I do have some housekeeping on actual information.
Okay.
I have now, for 2 podcasts in a row, talked about HR1 and Joe Manchin's replacement for HR1, his proposed replacement, which is to, rather than dealing with coming up with all these different ways to regulate elections, which is what HR1 does, his plan is to sturdy up pre-clearance, which is when a state that has a dubious track record of discrimination comes up with a law that could potentially discriminate. They need to get it okayed by either the Department of Justice or a court before it can actually be enacted. And the Supreme Court sort of shot that down in 2013. And Joe Manchin's idea was to beef it up congressionally so that the Supreme Court won't shoot it down. And he actually went further. He said, let's make it for all 50 states. Like not just for the southern states, make it for all states.
An interesting proposal.
Which he said would make it, would also Supreme Court proof it a bit more, that there's no discrimination against states.
Yes.
Right? No complicated formulae. It applies across the board. What happened yesterday was Chuck Schumer said, fuck off, mate. Not interested. Chuck Schumer just said, nah. He said, quote, here's the bottom line. The Voting Rights Act is actually authorised until 2032. So their letter to us saying, that's Murkowski and Manchin, saying authorise it. Well, pretty much done. Thanks. So he was quite dismissive of Joe Manchin's approach. Now, he might not have any choice because I don't think HR1 is going to be getting up anytime soon. But anyway, at this point in time, he's rejected Joe Manchin's approach.
Okay.
The Democrats look, they have pointed out that there's no guarantee the Supreme Court won't strike down Joe Manchin's version as well. Sure. Given that they seem to want to strike it down.
Yeah.
And also, they also point out quite reasonably something which I should have thought of, I must say, when I was talking about this, that given that the Department of Justice are the ones who can approve, like I think it was, I've forgotten who it was who said this, but he suggested that the Ron DeSantis Department of Justice. It'll be interesting to see the laws that they strike down under pre-clearance. He's right that Republicans get a say at pre-clearance as well, as Democrat administrations do. So that is an issue. Anyway, a question from the audience, which I'll just address quickly, and this is something you might want to weigh into. From Robert, hey Chaz, I have a question. Since July is quickly approaching, I'm wondering what your opinion is on the UAP report due to be presented to the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. What do you suspect the report can and might retain from a legal perspective? Do you think it may be postponed? Okay, so what he's referring to there is a report which actually might come out on June 1, they're talking about now. It might come out really soon. And it's been hyped a lot. Like in the last 2-3 weeks, there's been a lot of people saying, like John Ratcliffe, who he knew what was going on with the UAP program. That was part of his job, and he's been doing everything but saying we've got we've got UFOs in a tank somewhere. He's saying you'll be amazed what you find. We've got evidence. It's all this kind of stuff. Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of there's a guy called Luis Elizondo who's been doing the rounds, who was in charge of the program. We were going to interview him. We tried to interview him 2 weeks ago on Planet America. I think we're going to interview him next week. He keeps putting off. He said this week he was on holiday, so that's why he couldn't talk to us.
Right.
And he turned up on Tucker Carlson, so don't think we didn't notice. All you need to do is offer lots of money, and then they cancel their holiday for you. But anyway, we're going to be talking about him on the show on the show next week, so we'll hopefully we'll be saying that. But do you have any views about the UAP report?
Well, I can't go past what some wag said on social media, which is, how is this anything other than a viral marketing campaign for the Air Force?
Oh, yeah. Hadn't thought of that.
Like, the way that it's been hyped.
Because all the videos, Air Force videos.
Yeah, the way that it's been hyped, and it's like all of a sudden, after years of silence, there's there are UFOs, definitely. Yeah, and these, it's...
Join the Air Force, see a UFO.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it just... I'm cynical.
Yeah, look, that's fair enough. I should say that I don't think they're going to postpone it because they've just leaked so much over the last few weeks. No. It would actually make it worse if they did postpone it. It would drive people crazy.
Yeah. No, but I don't think we're going to find that the US government was hiding alien weaponry or...
like Men in Black style.
Yeah.
I should say, my personal view on this kind of stuff, and it may be proven drastically wrong in 2 weeks' time, but my view on this stuff is that just from a probabilistic point of view, it's very likely that aliens exist somewhere in the universe because the universe is very big, and it's very, very big. So it's very likely that life evolved somewhere else at some point in time.
Is it? We don't usually get this cosmological.
We don't
on PEP.
Lots of variety, but from using the same logic.
Yes.
It's just as it's extremely likely that they exist somewhere. It's extremely unlikely they've ended up on Earth for a couple of reasons. First of all, because they're so far away.
Yes.
Like at this point in time, I think the nearest planet which we think could possibly have life is like 28 light years away or something. It's like 20 or 30 light years away. Yeah. It's like, so, and that's probably not one of those planets. It might be hundreds of light years away, thousands of light years away, even more.
Yes.
If you had the technology to construct a craft that could travel, let's say the 10th of the speed of light, which is fantastical.
Can I just point out how far both of us are out of any kind of semblance of expertise at this point? But anyway, go on.
I would say everyone is, because none of us are aliens. So
that's right.
Like even the greatest expert on aliens is still kind of guessing.
Yes, yeah.
But apart from John Ratcliffe, maybe. Anyway, let's say you're traveling a tenth of the speed of light. That's still hundreds of years to get to it. And that's assuming you have enough fuel to travel for all those years, and it doesn't kill the beans on board and all the rest of it.
You've got enough podcasts to listen to.
Well, maybe not. There's a lot of podcasts out there, but you run out of time. That's hundreds of years of travel. Now, human beings have only been emitting signals of any kind for a couple of hundred years.
Yes.
Right? So they would need to have left before we started emitting signals, which means they would need to basically just be sending out crafts at random to just whatever planet looks like it could potentially have life in the thousands of planets out there in the universe that could, which would be a ridiculous use of resources. So I don't think they would do that. And it just doesn't make much sense.
Chaz thinks that alien bureaucracies are rational enough to not invest in exploring Earth. Now,
economic rationalism is very big on planet Kiwi.
Are you familiar with the theory of the Great Filter?
What's this?
Okay, I apologise in advance, but Chaz brought the whole topic up. Okay, so
no, Robert did.
This is something that people have speculated about based on this question that if the universe is infinitely big, there must be life out there. Why? It's not so much, why has it never come to us, but why has there never been any exchange of signals, right? Why have we, it's not so much a matter of them getting to us, but you would think there would have been some civilization around for long enough to actually develop the technology that would, actually could find us, right?
But we've only been around for a microsecond. So they could have come millions of years ago, or they might come in millions of years' time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever, yeah.
So, okay, so, yeah. So there's a few theories.
Patience.
Few theories about this.
Yes.
One is that Earth is such a fucking backwater that nobody cares.
Yeah, that's a
Right?
good one.
That's the,
Yes.
like,
I'm increasingly thinking that.
nothing there. Another is that actually advanced civilizations don't send out signals because the world is full of predatory super civilizations that you don't actually want to draw attention to yourself, or they'll come along and fuck you up.
Sounding a bit sci-fi to me.
Yeah. This is. I'm not saying that this is speculation by reputable scientists, but the third theory is the Great Filter.
Yes.
The Great Filter theory is that once a civilization gets sufficiently advanced, it destroys itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, well,
Does that make sense? So
that certainly makes sense on our planet.
Nobody ever actually gets to explore space because before they get the chance, they've destroyed each other through thermonuclear war, or they've made their own planet uninhabitable and everyone dies, or they've caused some other. So actually, no one ever gets to explore space.
Yeah.
Because sufficient level of advancement means sufficient level of self-destruction. That is the Great Filter.
Look, I could believe that. And I could also believe that it's just literally technically impossible.
Yeah.
Like, let's not just assume that in 1,000 years you've got the technology to travel across the universe. Maybe it's just impossible to travel across the universe.
Anyway,
okay. We'll find out in 2 weeks, no doubt.
Neither of us know what we're talking about. I recommend reading something by someone who has. I don't even know what that would be.
But if you do, it's going on the book list.
Yes.
Okay, and let's go into actual topics. Israel.
There's no topic bigger than the Great Filter, Jazz.
No, that's true, but we have covered that now.
Yes. Okay.
So there's a little ceasefire. Before we mention the ceasefire, I just want to answer another question, which is about Israel. So it's relevant. This was from Melina, and yes, that Melina, the one who's appeared on this podcast, which I thought was a great question. So I thought,
what is Melina asking?
When they shoot down the rockets, the Iron Dome,
yes,
where do the rockets land, and why doesn't it hurt people? Which is a great question.
No idea.
And that was a great question. So I looked it up, and the answer is that they have. Well, I suppose unsurprisingly,
we've just been speculating on interstellar travel, and we can't answer questions about rockets that go up a couple of hundred meters.
I can because I looked it up.
Okay.
They have a rocket siren system in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and the residents have 1 minute. They basically have 1 minute warning when a rocket's coming to hit shelter. Doesn't matter what the shelter is. There are shelters around the city, like actual shelters, but also it could be a safe room, it could be in a shop, in a stairwell, whatever, just to get off the street because indeed there is shrapnel all over the place.
Right.
And they give you a minute warning with a siren. You just go undercover, wait for the shrapnel to fall, and then you walk out again. So that's the answer.
Okay.
So there is shrapnel, but they avoid it with sirens. Okay. Now, ceasefire. Do you have any thoughts?
Not particularly, no.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, we have talked a lot about Israel, both on the last podcast with you and with Bill. So
yes.
I don't mind keeping this short. Okay. I would say, by the way, if you are interested in the Israel situation, it's worth, I don't always do this, it's worth watching our complete interview on Facebook with Daniel Kurtzer, who was W's ambassador to Israel and Clinton's ambassador to Egypt. He's pretty good. I asked him a lot of questions. In fact, I asked him one of the questions that I put to Bill, I believe. Yeah, about legal. Not a question. I was talking about.
Sorry, when you said Bill, I believe, that reminded me of the line, "Bill, I believe this is killing me."
Oh yeah.
As the smile ran away from his face. I'm sure that I could be a movie star if I could get out of this place.
If I recall, about a year ago.
Please don't come after us, whoever owns the copyright to that.
If it was Billy Joel.
Yes.
I recall about a year ago, you went on a Billy Joel run, and you during the podcast came with about 20 Billy Joel songs. I think you might be a closet Billy Joel fan.
Look, I listened to it a lot.
Yes,
in my younger.
Cut a lot. That's okay.
In my younger days.
Sure.
Yes.
Anyway, I would talked about the legal. It's to Bill. I talked about the situation with the evictions because remember how the precursor to the current conflict was real estate problems, and people didn't go into much detail what those real estate problems were. I was looking into it, and it seemed kind of shocking.
Right.
Which was the situation seemed to be that if you were a a Jew who lived in Jerusalem pre-1948, and then you were moved or dispossessed because of all the conflict then, and a Palestinian was now living where you used to live, and you could prove that you used to live there, then that Palestinian's evicted. But not just you proving it, anyone proving that a Jewish person used to live where a Palestinian lives now, they can get evicted. But it doesn't work the other way around.
No.
If a Palestinian lived there, they can't evict anyone.
No.
Right? And that was what caused the current conflict, that this American group of rich settlers was funding a whole bunch of lawsuits to get Palestinians evicted from things that weren't even their houses. They were just, and so I was saying that just doesn't sound fair. So I asked this ambassador about this. And what he said was that it's slightly more complicated than I put it. And he said there's a few more conditions, like involving rent and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But essentially, yes, that is the law. So
and what a surprise!
Yeah,
it's US funded.
But if you're interested, watch the interview because it was a good interview.
Yeah.
The only thing which I'd say about this topic, since we'll keep it short, is there was an. It's interesting to me what role Biden both has played and is going to play in the Middle East over the next few years. And the reason for that is because Trump was obviously a close ally of Netanyahu politically.
Yes.
But Biden's been mates with Netanyahu for decades. Like they actually were relatively close.
Yes, yeah.
And Biden has a bit of a track record of he's been in the past as pro-Israel as it gets.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he never had any time for settlements,
Yeah.
but otherwise he was basically a blank check kind of guy for Israel, right?
Yeah.
But sort of he was talking behind the scenes rather than publicly to Netanyahu. Now, the Dems are kind of dragging him slowly away because that's where they're going. You know, there was a YouGov poll I quoted on the TV show, where amongst Republicans, the sympathies are 61% Israeli and 5% Palestinian. Amongst Democrats, it's 16% Israeli, 23% Palestinian, and 35% neither. It's so they're kind of moving gradually towards the Palestinians. And Biden, if you look at his rhetoric over the last week, he's gradually been dragged kicking and screaming, just slowly away from where he's most comfortable being.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this time last week I would have said he was being as quiet as possible because he just doesn't even want it being an issue in the party. Yeah,
but they're just gradual. And I'm interested where you go when Biden and then Netanyahu have an actual personal relationship, and at the same time the Dems are starting to put pressure on Biden, and they're talking about starting to deal with the Israelis' aid. And just to put some numbers on that, America pays 1/5 of Israel's military budget. They've received they get about $4 billion a year. There's like $100 billion since 1947, $34 billion in economic aid as well. And Israel's granted exclusive access to better versions of American weapons technology than the rest of the Middle East.
Yes.
Now they do pay $200 million to the Palestinian Security Service as well, admittedly, but that's a lot less than
$200 million.
That's right. But the Dems anyway. The Dems are talking about they tried to freeze $734 million of Israel aid this week.
Yes.
And basically Steny Hoyer stopped them, and Steny Hoyer is like 192, so he's not going to be stopping them for much longer. Right. So anyway, if Netanyahu isn't a complete idiot, he can see that Biden is his last chance to make some kind of agreement with the Democrats. At least.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what happens. Maybe nothing happens. If you're interested, by the way, in the history of Biden and Israel, there's a good Vox piece about this. I'll put it in the homework.
All right.
In the blurb. Okay. So, I mean, I'm interested to see that. So that's all I'll say. Do you have anything else to add about Israel? No? Okay, that's fine. Let's go on to... Oh, yeah, let's go on to the Biden administration generally. I've got some interesting polls here. Not a huge surprise, but it's good to see it in actual numbers.
Yes.
The Greenberg Research poll polled voter intensity levels in swing states and districts.
Yes.
68% of Republican voters currently report the highest level of interest for the midterms. 57% of Democrats do.
Right.
Which is not a massive surprise. That's usually how it works.
No, that's the usual, yes.
But what that then leads to is a shellacking.
Yes.
That's what usually happens.
That is what usually happens,
Now, what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to short circuit that by essentially buying the electorate off over the next year or so. And this is an interesting one as well. This is YouGov. 68% of rural voters favour the stimulus checks.
Right.
That's not a big surprise.
Yeah.
50% of them associate it with Democrats. 32% of them associate with the Republicans, who supplied exactly 0 votes to those stimulus checks, which is interesting. Like if the Democrats managed to pass their whole agenda, or something close to the $4 or $6 trillion, and the Republicans get credit for it in those swing districts.
So 32% of rural voters?
Yeah.
That's actually lower than I would have expected.
Well, remember, the Democrats have been advertising. Like they're aware of this phenomenon. They're trying to head it around the bend.
But 32%, that's your standard Trump block.
That is true. Yeah, that's fair.
Right. I actually think that's I was expecting worse.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Well, anyway, that's the situation they're confronting.
Okay.
Regardless. One area where Biden definitely doesn't have the edge. Did you see him playing golf?
No.
Okay. I'm going to show this I'm going to blow this up for the peppers because this is quite a small shot. Look carefully.
Did he hit it? It went behind him.
Do you see that?
No.
The ball went backwards. He hit the ball, it went backwards. He's not very good at golf. That's a massive surprise.
That's okay.
I know. It's just quite funny.
I mean...
Yeah.
He's 400 years old.
I know. He's not quite as old as Steny Hoyer.
Surely you lose your swing at some point.
Yeah, the fact he's even trying. You should give him credit for actually getting out on the green.
Yeah.
Anyway. I reckon him and John Howard should get like a sporting reality show together.
That would be so good.
I would so watch that. Anyway, let's get serious though, because there has been a serious news week. Lots of grieving, lots of tragedy.
It's a serious podcast.
It's a very serious podcast talking about the Great Filter.
Yes.
That would be a great tragedy, the Great Filter. This whole week has been a great tragedy.
Yeah.
And there's been no great tragedy, Dave. I'm going to tee you up for this one. Then when Biden cruelly and heartlessly pulled the plug on the National Garden of American Heroes.
Yes.
It's the day that heroism died, Dr. Dave.
That's right.
Take us away.
Oh, look, it's just like going and urinating on every item in the Louvre.
Share your pain with us, mate.
It's a massive, massive loss to the world of art and...
You should tell these people what it is.
History. Okay. So what it is last year when, at this point we're into the 3rd or 4th year of tearing down statues as a form of political expression.
Yeah.
Now, has to be pointed out that most of the statues that were being torn down had been erected sometime at the height of Jim Crow. Okay, so these were Civil War monuments that were erected decades after the Civil War, 50 years or more after the Civil War, often not even in the South. Okay, so they were erected in places where the city or the authorities wanted to send a very clear message to the African American population that the law is not going to protect you, right? So basically erecting a Confederate monument in a courthouse or outside a courthouse in 1910 was a pretty clear signal that the law is not coming to help you. Also worth noting, these statues were not great works of art. They were often these mass-produced, fairly low-quality statues that, because a lot of towns were ordering them, there were companies that specialised in them. And they made both Union and Confederate monuments.
So they specialise in making
and
Civil War monuments.
Yeah, and sometimes... if they'd just run out of one, they would just send the other to the town. So there are actually towns in the South that have Confederate war monuments depicting Union soldiers, which is, pretty excellent. We're not talking about high-grade art here.
Having said that, there is something lovely about a really bad statue. Like there used to be one, for Sydney viewers, the Sydney listeners, there used to be one near the QVB, the Queen Victoria building, where there was like a dog. And when you press the button, the voice of John Laws came out.
Isn't that still there?
Is it still there? Anyway, it's a crappy statue.
Or has Ivan been cancelled? Ivan was Queen Victoria's dog, which spoke with the voice of John Laws.
I believe he said Worf.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that was a great landmark.
One for our peppers who work in the QVB area. Has Ivan been cancelled?
I will fight to the death for that dog. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. Anyway, so the statues became very useful symbolic rallying points, which is entirely appropriate. They go up representing the politics of one era. They come down representing the politics of another era. But there was a lot of just absolute bullshit about this is destroying history. No, it's not destroying history. Okay, first of all, history is not transmitted through statues. It's transmitted through books. Something
Not
that
for Trump.
something that most of the statue fetishists are, pretty much allergic to. Now, statues can tell you a lot about history, but not in the way that the statue fetishists think, right? As I said, the presence of those statues in places that weren't even Confederate areas erected 50 years after the Civil War, that actually does tell you a lot about history, but not what the statue fetishists wanted to actually know about history. But anyway, Trump's response to this was to plan the National Statue Garden, which would be a safe space for statues. Now, not even Trump was stupid enough to propose that it be filled with Confederate war heroes. Instead, eventually this list... I didn't realise that the list actually extended to 244 people in the end.
Yeah, it was a pretty low bar. It had like the Jeopardy host.
And I think that it was...
He was an American hero, even though he was Canadian.
Oh, look,
The game show host.
I know a lot of people who would have him very, very high up on the list of American heroes.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think it was like on the last day of Trump's presidency, the list was released. It included Kobe Bryant.
Sure.
I didn't realise. Conservatives love Kobe Bryant because he never had any political opinions. Or if he did, he very much kept them to himself. It was the Michael Jordan sort of approach.
Yeah.
Which, when Michael Jordan was asked to support the candidature of a black congressional candidate in North Carolina, he said, no, Republicans buy sneakers too. He did not want to...
That is true.
Did not want to jeopardize his commercial prospects. And given that Kobe Bryant basically took Jordan's nihilistic commercial philosophy and turned it into like a full-blown ideology, essentially. By the way, I'm paraphrasing my friend Neil Muhammad there. He was definitely never wanting to alienate anyone politically, and conservatives really love that.
It's probably also a bit of the fact that he reflected conservative ideology in that he was an insanely hard worker. And it was like, hey, if you work 20 hours a day for 30 years, you could be successful as well.
Get in that gym at 3 in the morning.
That's right.
Yes, yeah.
Although, this is a bit complicated the way we're explaining this. So maybe the best way to explain the conservative love of Kobe Bryant is to simply show a Bill Garrison tribute.
A Ben Garrison, yes.
Ben Garrison.
This is the craziest and most memorable Ben Garrison cartoon you will
right now
ever see.
If you're listening to the
Holy
podcast,
shit.
go to the video. I'm showing it to you right now.
I can't take my eyes off that fucking thing.
Kobe's death made the basketball cry.
Yes. First of all, it doesn't look like Kobe. No,
it doesn't.
Yeah.
I assume it's Kobe Bryant.
It looks like possibly a retired PE teacher or something, but yes. There's this basketball, this very muscular basketball. And I know what the Peppers are thinking. Dr. Dave's just jealous of the basketball's arms. Well,
I must admit I was thinking
true but irrelevant. But the basketball is crying.
It's crying little basketballs.
Basketball tears.
Yeah, or is it crying orange juice? I'm not quite sure. I think it's crying little basketballs.
Little basketball tears.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre tribute to anybody.
And why is Kobe Bryant smiling at the basketball being so distraught?
I don't know, but
he seems like a bit of a dickhead in this cartoon.
If Joe Biden hadn't cancelled the statue garden, that could have been in the statue garden. That could be
statue form. In fact, now I look at the list, I'm pretty sure crying basketball is one of them. I don't know if Kobe Bryant is, but the basketball's definitely a great American hero.
Yeah,
anyway,
so
that's gone.
The cancellation of the statue garden, it's kind of symbolic because no money had ever been appropriated by Congress for it. No site had ever been planned for. I would have been intrigued.
It's almost like it wasn't thought through properly.
As to where Trump thought this should have gone.
Because it wasn't big. I mean, they're talking 244 statues.
Yeah.
And you need room for the Scooby-Doo kids to come through as well. Because that is exactly a place where every Scooby-Doo was set.
The plan the plan was probably, if he'd won in 2020, it's like, all right, I'm knocking down every other hotel in DC. And I'm filling it with statue. All the hotels around DuPont Circle, gone.
That would be worthy.
Statuary.
While you're in your snarky best, tell us, and we're talking about Trump, tell us about these these revelations, these Obama-Trump revelations.
Oh, yes, there's a new book coming out by Isaac Edward de Vere that reveals, shockingly, that Obama did not have a very high opinion of Trump.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Amazingly.
What gave it away? Was it the 10-minute roast that Obama did in the 2011 the comedy dinner?
Yes, which some people like to cite as the origin story of Trump. This is what turned him...
I still think it was John Oliver.
Yeah, I do. Yes, anyway, I mean, I suppose the one...
What are the revelations? They're just Obama
the one sort
him.
of semi-interesting one is that Obama, like a lot of other Democrats, it has to be said, at the time, thought that it was better for Trump than Ted Cruz to actually win the nomination. I'm not sure if it was clear that he thought it was better for Trump to win the nomination or that it was better for him to be president, because the view was, look, Ted Cruz is a lot smarter. Ted Cruz is far more dangerous, both as an election opponent and as a president.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be wrong because Trump had absolutely no sense of constraints. This was one of the things that was got wrong about Trump very early on. And in fact, quite consistently, it was the belief that some kind of constraint would kick in, and it never did. And it's still not. Like, there are no constraints. Whereas it's hard to imagine Ted Cruz not at some point running up against constraints.
Yeah. I mean, Ted Cruz, at the very least, is a rational human being who wants to be re-elected.
Yes.
And Donald Trump wants to be re-elected, but he isn't necessarily a rational human being. So
Yes.
he doesn't do things necessarily that are going to help him get re-elected. Whereas Ted Cruz, everything he did would be trying to get himself re-elected.
Yes.
You would presume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but apparently, reality did set in. Obviously, I mean, Obama was just not very vocal during nearly the entire Trump administration until the election campaign. And, and then he actually got out there. I do wonder whether Trump was ever irritated by the fact that Obama used Twitter so rarely, but whenever he did, it's just like millions of retweets.
Of course that would piss Trump off. And the truth is he shouldn't be pissed off because that's what happens when someone doesn't use it much. When they use it, it's a bigger deal. I'm not saying that when if I don't use Twitter much and I tweet, I'm going to get 1 million retweets.
Yeah.
But you get more than you otherwise would
Yeah.
if you tweeted 20 times a day like Trump did. That's all I'm saying.
But I remember looking up at some point. So there's a Wikipedia page on the most retweet or the most liked tweets in history or something. And I think at one point, it's 50 of them, something like 5 were Obama and 45 were BTS.
Yeah, I can believe that. And Ellen's photo.
Yeah.
That's the top 51.
So that would have just
Ellen's photo at the
that
Oscars.
would have just pissed Trump off enormously. Like Obama didn't need to do or say anything to piss Trump off enormously during this peried. But yes,
By the
apparently-
way, finish your sentence.
privately, Obama described Trump as a racist, sexist madman.
I do believe that. By the way, just to show how diverse our knowledge is in this podcast.
Yes.
You mentioned BTS.
Yes.
I found out something very interesting the other day.
What?
In matters K-pop.
Yes.
The female version of BTS is Blackpink. Well, they're not a female version, but they're a very big female K-pop group. Mm-hmm. Some would say the biggest.
Right.
And one of them is this woman called Rosé. She's, some would say the star of Blackpink.
Okay.
She's certainly popular.
Yep.
She's from New Zealand.
Really?
Yes, she's from New Zealand, and she was born in New Zealand, and then she grew up in Australia, and then she went off to when she was a teenager, she went off to try her luck in Korea, and she became one of the biggest stars in the world through South Korea.
Wow.
When you see her interviewed, she's got this big Ocker accent.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, with this tiny little South Korean kind of drawl over the top of it. But yeah,
Amazing.
I had no idea until just the other day. There you go. You learn something every day on PEP.
That's great.
Not always about American politics.
Yeah.
Do you have any interest in this January 6th commission? Do we want to talk about this?
I just don't think it's got that much chance of happening at this point. I mean,
it
was surprising that many
35.
House Republicans voted in favour of it. So this is...
And that was after Kevin McCarthy tried to shoot it down.
Yes.
Which just shows you how much they respect Kevin McCarthy, as much as I respect Kevin McCarthy. Go on.
If you don't know what we're talking about, this
please.
is the plan to create a 9/11 style commission into the January 6th Capitol riot. And I mean, not only did Kevin McCarthy try to shut it down, Mitch McConnell also indicated that he was going to do his best to try to shut it down in the Senate as well. And despite that, 35 House Republicans voted for it. Now, I did not expect that at all.
Neither did I.
I mean, in a sane world, it is something that you would expect, given that these people's lives were threatened on January 6th. You would expect something like, I mean, how many fucking commissions into Benghazi were there?
I think it was 8.
At
least 8.
And, okay, but I mean, only 10 House Republicans had voted to impeach Trump. Now, this is obviously a milder thing, but nonetheless, I was surprised that it got that level of support. It's hard to see it getting 10 Senate votes. It'll get a few.
Well, 7 already voted to remove Trump at the last impeachment, right?
Yeah.
So those guys are gone. All 7 of them are gone,
yes.
right? And so there is no loss for them to vote for
but
this.
I think even of them, only Bill Cassidy has sort of actively said so far, I'm definitely voting for it. I think the rest are keeping their powder dry, but you definitely expect to see a few of them voting for it. So the question is, if, and I think it's a bit of a stretch, but if all 7 of those did vote for it, where are the other 3 votes coming from?
I'm not sure. It's hard.
I don't see it, to be honest.
It's a weird one because I mean, I didn't see 35 either in the House.
Yeah. That's true.
It's a weird one because, like, Kevin McCarthy, like the negotiation was with a Republican. It was
Yes.
they essentially, when we first talked about this like a month ago, I remembered saying that I thought Democrats, Nancy Pelosi was being quite unreasonable with her demands. And clearly Kevin McCarthy thought that as well, because he basically instructed his mate to go and negotiate on his behalf, this John Katko guy. And John Katko said, okay, well, we're going 50-50 on this, expecting them to say no.
Yeah.
And then they said, yes, okay, let's do it. Let's have a fair commission. And then all of a sudden, McCarthy's just backpedaling, going, oh no, look over there, I don't like this. And he had to improvise with some reason why you couldn't have it. And he came up with the lamest reason, which was, the renewed focus by Democrats to now stand up an additional commission ignores the political violence that has struck American cities, a Republican congressional baseball practice. And most recently, the deadly attack on Capitol Police on April 2, 2021. The presence of this political violence in American society cannot be tolerated and it cannot be overlooked. So just, if you missed that, he was saying that the 2017 shooting of some random socialist at a congressional baseball practice match should be part of the same inquiry as the Capitol riots. Like, they have something to do with each other. I mean, it's like saying that the 9/11 inquiry should have dealt with Timothy McVeigh as well, like, just because they're both kind of terrorism.
Yeah.
Like,
there's all sorts
it makes no sense at all.
There's all sorts of political violence that goes on.
Yes. And
in America, that's true.
And if you want to have a political violence commission, sure, but I think the Capitol riots are they're a separate thing.
Yes, they are very much a separate thing.
And then Johnthorne came out and basically said, "Oh, we just don't want to talk about this during the midterms."
Yes.
Like, he was very honest about
it. That's absolutely right. Yes. He's like, the Democrats are going to use this for political gain.
Yeah.
Well, yes, they will. Because the best thing that the Democrats have working in their favour at the moment is that Trump will not shut the fuck up about the election. As we've said before, Trump will, whatever the most extreme stance is regarding the election, Trump is going to take it. So other Republicans are desperately trying to put these veneers of respectability on things like the Maricopa recount. They're saying, no, this is just to ensure Americans of electoral integrity so that we can make improvements next time. Meanwhile, Trump on his bespoke blog is saying, and once we uncover the fraud in Maricopa, then Pennsylvania is next.
Yeah.
Then New Hampshire is next. New Hampshire for some reason. Yeah.
He's pulled out the state dominoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this person to whom they are still paying fealty is taking the craziest positions possible. So this absolutely works in the Democrats' favor because that is deeply unpopular with the American electorate. Every time Republicans try to put this veneer of respectability on it, Trump just wipes it away.
It's funny you mention that because Jonathan Bernstein is a writer who I read quite a lot. He had a theory which I thought was quite clever. He said, if ever you're going to do a talking filibuster, this is the thing to do a talking filibuster for. And he said the reason why is because usually in a talking filibuster scenario, it suits the minority to just talk shit and waste time.
Yep.
And to grandstand. In this case, they don't want to talk about this.
No.
The whole point of this is for them to stop talking about January 6th.
Yes.
And so make them talk about January 6th forever if they won't do the commission. To give them an option. If you don't have a proper commission, we're just going to make you stand there and talk about January 6th forever.
Crafty Jonathan Bernstein. Unfortunately, that's fucking way too intelligent for Chuck Schumer to put into practice.
I'll tell you the one thing that annoys me about this, actually, is, and I didn't say this on the show, but it's just as a little aside.
Yes.
This kind of commission that they're talking about here.
Yes.
It's bipartisan.
Yep.
It's independent. Has a focused report on a particular set of facts to try and unveil what happened.
Yes.
That is precisely the kind of commission that America would force on another country.
Yes.
That just had political upheaval.
Absolutely.
And they're not taking their own medicine.
Yeah.
And the fact is that medicine is good medicine.
Yes.
Like it's a good reason they try and force it on other countries.
Yeah.
It's and that's what annoys me as well. The rank hypocrisy of it all. But anyway. I'll tell you one other thing. I'll tell you why I hope it happens, because there will be some great stuff. And I want to give you some example of some of the great stuff that would be this commission.
Okay.
Have you seen the quote from Albert Watkins, the Q Shaman attorney?
No, I have not.
It's a great quote. This is a very interesting defense from Albert Watkins of the Q Shaman.
Okay.
Quote. This is a quote. Let me emphasize, what I'm about to read you is a quote.
Okay.
This came out of his mouth.
Yes.
A lot of these defendants, and I'm going to use this colloquial term, perhaps disrespectfully, but they're all fucking short bus people. These are people with brain damage. They're fucking retarded. They're on the goddamn spectrum. But they're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbours, our co-workers. They're part of our country. These aren't bad people. They don't have prior criminal history. Fuck. They were subjected to 4+ years of goddamn propaganda, the likes of which the world hasn't not seen since fucking Hitler.
My God, Jazz.
I just want to quote him.
When you
at the beginning, perhaps disrespectfully, he said. Yes, go on.
Can I just request when you produce this podcast?
Yes.
Can you please put the Star Spangled Banner behind?
I will try. I'll try. I'm not very technically good at this, but I'll try.
Or God Bless America. Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Because that is one of the most amazing quotes I've ever heard from a lawyer defending his clients.
A little too honest, maybe, but you got to give him points for originality.
Shit.
It's such a great quote, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why we need a commission.
Where did that come from?
I saw it in TPM.
Wow.
Yes. It's so good.
Look, he's using terms that I would never use. to describe even to describe these people who I obviously don't like, but
he's representing the guy who is standing on the dais with a fur hat, okay, and the face paint. He needs to throw the dice. Anyway, Dr. Dave, talk to us. Actually, I'll set this up and then I'll get you to talk to us about abortion. I'll set this up. Lots of states, they pass ridiculous abortion laws, right?
Yes, they did.
For instance, just this week, Texas passed a heartbeat bill, which was essentially defining a legal abortion as an abortion where the fetus doesn't have a heartbeat. You literally have to test for the heartbeat. If you find a heartbeat, then you can't abort under this law. The interesting thing about this law, it's a bit different to the usual heartbeat bill, because anyone who thinks that an abortion took place illegally, as in the heartbeat wasn't tested, can sue. Yeah. Note, they do not need to have any connection to the parties involved. Any random activist group can sue any doctor or abortion clinic or whatever. And they have to live in Texas. Yeah. So as I say, this is new ground, right? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. But anyway, that bill now exists. 17 states have their own special form of these kinds of laws. Right. The fetal pain laws in this case, which say it's illegal to have an abortion when the fetus is old enough to feel pain. Yep. Now, that in itself, ideologically, probably that's fair enough. Yep. I mean, you can agree or disagree with it. Mm-hmm. But what's a bit insane is the bit where you try and work out how to tell a fetus can feel pain, because you can't chat to the fetus. So, I mean, how do you know it's pain and not a reflex motion when the fetus moves, for instance? Because they say, oh, look, the fetus just moved, just twitched. Yeah, maybe it's just a reflex, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, most research suggests it's around the 29th or 30th week the fetus may feel pain. Can't know for sure, but that's what we think. The laws in these 17 states suggest fetuses can feel pain around the 20th week because of wishful thinking.
Yes.
Essentially. That leads us to Mississippi. Take it away, Dave.
So before we actually get to Mississippi, I don't know how familiar all the peppers are with the Roe versus Wade framework. The Roe versus Wade framework, which has been in place since 1973, it follows on from earlier cases around birth control that established a constitutional right to privacy.
Yes.
Now, in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights, there's no right to privacy mentioned. It's something that is put together from the Fourth Amendment, which is, well, it's got a lot about the right of persons to be secure in their property and it can't be arbitrarily seized. It's basically the authority of the government stops at your front door. The Fifth Amendment, which is right against self-incrimination, and the Ninth Amendment, which is the one that says that the Bill of Rights is not exhaustive or exclusive of all rights held by the people. So put together, the Supreme Court says there's an implied right to privacy, which I think was first established in Griswold versus Connecticut in 1960, which was a birth control case. And it's that right to privacy which was used in Roe versus Wade to strike down state laws that prohibited abortion outright and which was reaffirmed in Casey versus Planned Parenthood in 1990. It has to be said, a bit of a rickety structure. It's a rickety structure that I believe fundamentally reflects a political compromise. And it has protected abortion rights to this point, but there was always going to be this danger. It was vulnerable. Even a lot of people who are in favour of abortion rights don't think that Roe versus Wade is actually a particularly good framework.
And for the record, I'm one of those people.
For protecting them. This right to privacy that's sort of been cobbled together out of the Constitution that in some ways actually avoids kind of the real issues.
And Judge Baden Ginsburg was also one of them.
Yes, she absolutely, she absolutely was one of them. Now, what pro-choice advocates see as the central danger of this Mississippi lawsuit is if fetal viability is abolished as the sort of, master criterion in terms of you can't make laws that affect the period before fetal viability, then that's it. Then there can't really be any other constraint put in place.
And let me just say two things quickly, just on that. First of all, viability is generally considered to be around the 23rd to 24th week.
Yes.
And the Mississippi law is 15 weeks.
15 weeks.
Yeah. So this is well below viability.
Now, I mean, this was a law that was passed in 2018. Where it was immediately ruled unconstitutional. Mississippi then responded by passing a 6-week law, last year. And so, states are just putting in more and more extreme laws. And this has been going on since Kavanaugh joined the Supreme Court. So they knew that, I'm blanking on Anthony Kennedy. Yeah. They knew that Anthony Kennedy wasn't going to go for this bullshit. But ever since Kavanaugh got on, there's been this wave of states passing these laws, which they know violate Roe versus Wade. The whole idea is to try to get it to the Supreme Court.
In this case, Mississippi barely even defended their bill. They just said, "No, we're appealing. We're appealing until they get to the Supreme Court."
And now there was actually a lot of division within the pro-life movement around these tactics, because the feeling was a lot of these were just so stupid that they were never going to get anywhere near the Supreme Court, and that there was a fear that they could actually do a lot of damage, that they needed to wait until they actually put together something credible. But then, of course, Amy Coney Barrett joined the Supreme Court, and that was the end of that discussion. So then it was just a race to pass the most extreme laws possible to actually get it before the Supreme Court. Now, up until this point, lower courts have just been striking these down,
Yes.
left, right, and centre. There was at one point a Louisiana law did make it to the Supreme Court, and
That was the one that was mirroring a Texas case.
yes, it was mirroring a Texas case. So in that case, Roberts actually sided with the Liberals on the court, which back then included Ruth Bader Ginsburg to strike it down. But he made it very clear that this was purely on the grounds of respect for precedent. Meanwhile, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh voted to uphold the Louisiana law. So it really does look like the numbers would be there.
And when we say precedent, we don't mean the precedent of Roe versus Wade. He means the precedent of the Texas case that had occurred literally the year before and was identical.
Yeah.
Yeah. See it.
Yeah. So you would think that at this point, even if Roberts did join the Liberals again, that there would be a 5-person majority. I mean, nobody seems to have any doubt about how Amy Coney Barrett would vote on this. So as Gorsuch might be Kavanaugh has sometimes shown sort of surprising flashes of independence. But, I would say this is by far the biggest threat to Roe versus Wade that I have ever seen.
I'm going to tell you how we know, but before I do, I'll just note that Dave before made the critical point that once you strike down the Roe versus Wade rule of all abortions before viability are legal, then there is no. It's a lot harder to throw up other restrictions, other impediments to making abortion illegal.
That has basically been the master restriction.
Yeah. And the precise question the Supreme Court has already said they are going to weigh on, because these guys, when they petition the Supreme Court, they put forth a bunch of questions they would like to litigate.
Yep.
The Supreme Court chooses the questions they want litigated.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has chosen the question for this case. Let me read you the question word for word. Whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So they are heading directly for that particular prohibition in Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court chose that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the alarm bells are ringing there.
Yeah.
But the reason why I think you are right to be concerned is not that. I mean, that is part of it.
Yes, yeah.
But it's also the way cases are chosen by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
They're chosen when you need 4 justices to select, because they get thousands of cases that they could potentially select, but they only select about 100 of them at a time, or 100 per year. So the way they choose that 100 is by 4 justices putting up their hand and saying, I think that we should hear that case. Okay.
Yes.
Now, this case came up in September last year, 8 months ago. And when every month they have their little committee hearing where they say, what cases are we going to hear?
Yeah.
And they've put it off 8 months in a row, this case.
Right.
They haven't gotten rid of it. They haven't said, no, we're not going to hear it. They said, we'll come back to that next month. They've done it 8 times.
Yes.
I don't believe there's ever been a case they have done that to 8 times in a row.
Right.
Okay, so why they keep on putting it off? The reason why, presumably, is because the 4 conservative justices who would like for that to be heard, and we know who they are.
Yep.
they're the 4, other than Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, we know for a fact want it to occur, and possibly the other 2, we don't know that yet.
Yeah.
But those 4 are not going to bring up a case they're about to lose. They don't want to create another precedent against what they want.
Yes.
So they're only going to bring it up when they know they've got the numbers, right? And so month after month, they tried to bring up, and they did the numbers.
Yes.
And they realized that for whatever reason, Roberts probably wasn't on side, and maybe Coney Barrett was a bit shy or whatever. Yeah. She wanted to, maybe not in her first month does she want to overrule Roberts, whatever.
Yeah.
But now they're hearing the case.
Right.
On the exact question of Roe versus Wade. What that tells me is they've done the numbers.
Yes.
They know they've got 5. They might have 6.
Yeah.
We don't know, but we know if they didn't have 5, they wouldn't be hearing this case.
Yes.
So that's why I agree with you. That this is a real threat for abortion laws. The only other interesting thing about this, which I think is worth noting, is when this case comes back, they're going to be delivering a verdict in the middle of next year. Like May, June, July type period next year.
Yeah.
Just before the midterms.
Yes.
Which makes it, to me, exceedingly unlikely that they're going to go, that's it. Do what you like with abortion. We're completely overturning Roe versus Wade. Because if they did that, that would be politically a bad idea directly before the midterms. I know I'm being very cynical when I say this, but all the evidence suggests I should be cynical.
Judges are politicians in robes.
And so what I think is probably going to happen is they're probably going to develop some new doctrine, some new kind of, I can't even think about it, but something where they go, you know what, some abortions pre-viability can be restricted under these circumstances.
Right.
And I don't know what they're going to be, but I think it's going to be some halfway house,
yes,
which is going to create a loophole, which then the red states are going to ram themselves through.
Right, yes.
And then there'll be another case and so forth. That's my guess. But one thing I'm certain about is they are not going to leave Roe versus Wade untouched.
Right.
At the end of this case. Pretty sure about that. So anything else to say about that?
No, I think we've said it all.
What time is it? It's policy time. What time is it? Yeah, it's policy time. The sting for this goes forever, so I just got to talk a little bit longer. Talking a bit longer. It's a great sting. Yeah. Okay, that's enough. Now, I spoke a little bit more about Congress with Bill. You'd be glad to know. So you didn't have to listen to all that.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit left over, and it's the best bit.
Right.
Which is the way they're going to pay for the American... Oh, sorry, before I do this, I was about to talk about the American Family Plan. Just a little update on the American Rescue Plan, where I can see that I was wrong.
Right.
A little amendment.
Okay.
I've been talking a lot for the last 2 years about states during a recession.
Yeah.
And about the fact that the thing they have to watch out for is that when there's a recession, states have to balance their budgets. It's in their constitution.
Yeah.
And if the federal government doesn't give the states lots of money, the states take in much less unemployment, so much less tax during a recession, and they have to pay out much more in unemployment and Medicaid and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And so they end up running massive deficits, but they can't run a deficit because they've got balanced budget amendments. So they end up having to fire people to balance their budgets. And so I was saying for that reason, it made the last recession so much worse that they didn't the federal government didn't pay the states enough money to keep them going. They sacked so many workers as a result of that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they've definitely haven't made that mistake this time around with all the pandemic stuff. They've given the states plenty of money. In the American Rescue Plan, they gave the states, $350 billion. Okay. They might have overcompensated.
Okay.
Let me give you some numbers here. California expects to have a $75 billion budget surplus at the end of this current fiscal year. They announced that on the day they heard that the Treasury Department was giving them another $27 billion from the rescue plan. Texas has a $750 million surplus before they get another $15 billion from the Treasury Department. New Jersey has a $6 billion surplus. They're getting another $6 billion. Arizona had a $1 billion surplus. They're getting another $4 billion.
Oh, imagine how many election audits you can do with that.
Yes. And look, basically what's happened is they've just taken in much more tax than they thought they were going to. The Bureau of Economic Analysis says the state and local tax collections for the second quarter of 2021 are 7% ahead of the first quarter of 2020, which was the last quarter before the pandemic.
Yes.
So they're doing well. But what I say to that is, yes, I was wrong. I think the Democrats overshot as well. But it's better to be too generous during the greatest recession since the Great Depression than not generous enough.
That's true. That's
what I would say. So I would say, yes, probably a mistake, but a good mistake to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Now, American Families Plan. This is the interesting part. How are they going to pay for it? Because there's all kinds of details which have not gotten much attention. First of all, they're talking about raising the top tax bracket from 37% to 39.6%, which is undoing the 2017 cuts, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now, you might have heard Joe Biden say about 50,000 times that no one who earns less than $400,000 is going to have their taxes raised a penny.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's bullshit. The reason why that's bullshit is because that's individuals.
Right.
The way it works is for families with a taxable income above $509,000 and for individuals above $452,000.
Yeah.
That's when they raise your tax.
Yes,
It doesn't take much maths to see
that
a family with two income earners who earn more than $250,000 each are going to have their taxes raised. Now you might go, poor people who earn more than $250,000 a year and have a partner who also earns more than $250,000. I'm just noting that that's misleading.
Yeah.
Okay, so just point it out there. Not a big deal, but just got to state that. This is an interesting one. Capital gains taxes currently are 20% for the highest bracket.
Right. Yes.
They want to raise that to be the same as income tax. So 39.6% if they do the other one for those over $1 million. All right, that's the top 0.3%. Okay, now personally, I don't understand why they can't just make all capital tax gains at income tax rate.
Gains taxes.
Yeah, gains tax. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
At the same rate as income tax, because you're not going to hurt the poor. The poor don't make a lot of capital gains. They're not wheeling and dealing on the stock market. So it's
that's a very pre-GameStop mindset.
yeah, okay, sure. Well, you know what if they make a huge fortune out of their capital gains out of GameStop, they can pay tax as well. How about that? Because you've got to pay for the government. Anyway, I just flagged that.
Okay.
That to me is an area where you can get more money. But I know why Biden's going to do that because of the $400,000 thing.
Yeah.
All right. But they're closing a number of other tax loopholes, which I think are good loopholes. Number one, the carried interest.
Hang on, you think it's good that they're closing loopholes?
Yes.
Or you think that these are good loopholes?
I think it's good they're closing these loopholes.
Right, yes. Yeah.
These are bad loopholes.
Yeah.
Number one, the carried...
See, if I knew anyone who had like a favourite set of tax loopholes, it would probably be, and not even making money out of them, just likes them for some reason.
From an ideological point
of view. It would be you, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The number one is the carried interest loophole, which people refer to a lot. And a lot of people are confused what it means because the words carried interest, you go, what the hell is that?
Yes.
That actually comes from 16th century sea captains.
Really?
Yes, it was, because they were, when these merchant ships, right, when they were paid a 20% share in the goods they shipped. That share, the 20%, was the interest they had. And the goods they shipped were what they carried.
Oh.
So that's the interest that you carry in your ship, right?
I always assumed it was something completely different, like interest payments carrying over from one year to another or something like that.
No. It's basically
legit carried interest.
It's a commission, essentially.
Amazing.
It's just a funny way of saying a commission.
This is the most educational episode of PEP ever.
There you go. Now, obviously, they're not ship captains now.
Yeah.
They're more pirates, to be honest, because we're talking about hedge funds.
Yes.
Right. So basically, hedge funds and private equity companies these days, the way they work is they take billions, if not tens of billions of dollars from investors, and they then go and invest it, right? And they get paid what they call a 2 and 20 scheme. What is a 2 and 20 scheme? Is they pocket 2% of the money that they invest, and then take 20% of the profits. Now, the 20% of the profits it's the same as the 20% that the ship captains used to get for what they brought over. These hedge fund guys brought over this
Maybe
profit.
It's some carried interest thing that is preventing the spaceships from getting this far.
You think that's the great filter?
Fuck off, it's not worth it.
You think that's the great filter?
Carried interest.
Carried interest just destroys everyone. Anyway, the fact is, right now, they're treated like capital gains. Like they invested their own money. But they didn't invest their own money.
No,
they invested someone else's money.
Yeah.
They're a glorified salesman taking a commission.
Oh.
That's what they are.
He's called them pirates and glorified salesmen taking a commission.
That's right. And they're taking no risk when they invest, right?
That's true.
And so it's their wage. They should be charged wage taxes.
Yes.
And that's what Biden wants to do. And they're going to make a lot of money out of it. That's a good one.
Good.
Personally, I would, if you did what I did and you just treat capital gains like income, it wouldn't matter because that would all be income anyway.
Would not.
Right. So anyway, that's why you should treat capital gains like income. Anyway, loophole number 2, closing what they call the step-up loophole. And this one really annoys me. This is the way it works. If you buy a property at, say, $100,000, right, and then you die when it's worth $1 million, you pass it on to your kids, and then they sell it for $1.1 million, they only count the last $100,000 that the kid earned.
Right.
Basically that first $900,000 of capital gains, since it wasn't sold by the first owner, just disappears. Right. As far as the tax department goes.
Yes.
And what Joe Biden is saying, that's the step up loophole. And what Joe Biden is saying is that they will count for anyone who makes more than $1 million from their gains. Yeah. They'll count the entire capital gain. Yeah. Even from the people before them. Yeah. So they'll get rid of that. But if you make less than $1 million, then they'll keep the step up.
Yes.
Loophole,
right.
That to me, now I understand that it's a bit slack to the inheritor that how the amount of tax they would pay depends on what their parents did
Yes, yeah,
beforehand. I understand that, but it's
Yeah.
still free money for them.
Yes,
It's,
yeah.
personally, what I would do is I would screw off all that and I just have a whopping big estate tax.
Right, yes.
Which people call a death tax, like that's a problem. Like my view of tax,
I'm in favour of massive estate taxes.
because my view, I think you can't go big enough with estate tax, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because what 101 economics is, what you tax a lot of, you get less of. And so lots of things that are taxed,
Yes.
you don't want to tax them too much. You know, like income, you want incentive for people to earn income.
So what
right?
Chaz is saying is the more that we tax death, the less death there will be.
Exactly, we'll be immortal. then the great filter won't occur. No. I don't mind disincentivizing leaving massive amounts to your heirs. Fuck them, they can go and work.
I completely agree.
And so as far at the moment, the estate tax is ridiculous. It only kicks in at like $11 million. Until $11 million, you don't pay a cent in estate tax.
Yeah.
Like it should be massive, the estate tax, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't need to worry about step ups. But anyway, this one is the most annoying one in terms of complications.
Yep.
Great idea, funding the IRS more. We've all talked about this.
Yep.
There's literally $1 trillion on the table every
Yes.
year
Yep.
of unpaid tax. If they fund the IRS more, conduct more audits,
Yep.
that's and it's all the top 1%. 70% of the unpaid taxes are from the top 1%.
Absolutely,
right?
yes, yeah.
So that's a win-win-win, right? The problem is, and this is a huge issue that hasn't been covered much.
Yeah.
It doesn't count for budget scorekeeping.
Right.
They don't count it. The rule is that they don't count any savings from increased either IRS audits or program integrity initiatives across the government designed to make programs more cost effective. So that's $1 trillion hole in their cost.
Right. Yeah.
Even though they will make $1 trillion out of it, or at least a few $100 billion.
Yes.
They don't get to count that.
Yeah.
And so if they're trying to say pass it through reconciliation, that's going to make a huge difference.
Yes.
They don't get to count it. So that's a massive shame. Anyway,
Yeah.
that'll probably do for now. We've only got 17 minutes. Let's talk about COVID. That was policy time.
That was policy time.
Okay. I'm going to get you to talk about the new guidelines in a second. Let me just set up with the numbers, current numbers. 7-day moving average for cases is about 28,000 new cases, which is way back to where it was in June last year after the first wave and the first lull. 600,000 deaths have hit now. A 7-day moving average of deaths is 591, which is the lowest it's been since that same period, July 6. Vaccines are dropping rapidly. They're down to 1.8 million vaccine doses a day now. They were up at 3 million doses a day not too long ago. That's the lowest level since March 1. 37.8% of the population is fully vaccinated at the moment, which is a number I care about, not Joe Biden's dodgy 60% of adults have had at least one shot thing. Which is the number, by the way. It's 60%. He's getting for 70%. 37.8% of the population fully vaccinated. You want, according to Israel at least, if you use the Israel case study, you want at least 50% of the population vaccinated.
Right.
And they're at 37.8% and the rate is dropping rapidly.
Yes.
They're going to fall short of 50%.
That's right.
Herd immunity at this rate. Having said that, it's a good time for cases. More than half of the American states have seen the average number of deaths per day drop to single digits or even zero in some states.
Yes, and Biden is trumpeting that this is the first time that actually cases are falling in all 50 states.
Yes, that's
Prior to this, there's always been, it's rising somewhere.
We'll come back to America in a second. World figures. They've actually been, well, this stat is actually a week old. I'm not sure it's still the case, but just imagine this was a week ago. More world cases had been reported in the prior 2 weeks than in the entire first 6 months of the pandemic.
Right, yeah.
So, we think of it like it's over because it's kind of over in America, but the rest of the world is not over.
Yeah.
India's obviously the red zone for this. They're up to 4,500 deaths a day at the moment. Using crematoriums, India estimates actually it's more like a 25 to 50,000 death a day death toll in India. And about 100 times that for the caseload. So that's a lot of cases. In fact, things are so desperate in India that someone's finally come up with a worse cure than Trump's disinfectant cure.
Yeah.
They've got like people putting lemon juice in their nose to cure.
Yes, yeah.
And to prevent it, they're covering themselves with cow dung and urine. You think that's a joke? It's not. I'm putting up a picture right now. There you go. Dave was spared seeing that picture, but trust me, it's real. Although admittedly, I probably prefer them to rub cow dung on me than experiment with disinfectant. At least you die clean, I guess. Anyway, over in China, they're killing it with their vaccine regime.
Yep.
But that's probably a poor choice of words. There are question marks over the quality of the vaccines, like I've said a few times, but you can't question their commitment.
No.
Let me give these numbers. 15% are fully vaccinated at the moment, which is not much compared to America's 37.8%. But China's going at 0.9 of a dose per 100 people at the moment. That's per day. Just behind Canada, second in the world.
Yeah.
Canada's 0.96. US is on 0.53. Sweden's an interesting one. We talked about Sweden a lot last year, didn't we?
We did, yes.
The results are in. Do you want to hear them?
Yes.
This is the final results from the Nordic natural experiment, where
Yes.
Sweden did their thing and the other Nordic nations did their thing.
Yes.
Cumulative COVID deaths per million people. Sweden, 1,403. Denmark, 431. Finland, 166. Norway, 141. But wait, what about the GDP change?
What about the GDP change?
Because remember,
wasn't Sweden's economy kept pristine
That's
because
the
they just
one.
did what they wanted?
That's the one. Annual GDP change of 2020. Sweden, minus 3.1%. Finland, minus 2.8%. Denmark, minus 2.8%. Norway, minus 2.5%.
Wow.
The results are in, I'm afraid, Swedish lovers. Now, the Swedish lovers would say that Sweden's slightly different to the other Nordic countries because they have more elderly people and they really screwed up the nursing homes.
Yes.
Which is separate to the Swedish system. For those who don't remember, they basically, for the first few weeks, explicitly told their nursing home staff to not wear masks unless they showed symptoms. And then they spread it everywhere.
Yeah.
Also, there's more migrants in Sweden. The other countries are more monocultural and monoracial, which might make a difference.
Look, I'm sure the Sweden fetishists, that would be the first thing.
Probably.
Like, given
probably.
who the Sweden fetishists
Yes,
are, that would
that's true.
definitely be, if it wasn't for all those Muslims.
On the darkies, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It hit Sweden before the other Nordic countries. That's a reasonable point. So the Nordic countries could learn a little bit more from the other places, not Sweden. Anyway, whatever. It's bullshit. But but to be fair, Sweden is right in the middle of all the other European countries.
Yes.
If you don't compare them to their direct neighbours.
Yeah.
Which I do.
Yes.
Anyway, that's a Swedish result. Excess deaths for the rest of the world, because I like to do these. No, screw that. I'll do that another time. Studies, very quickly. Chicago University economist Casey Mulligan did an interesting study which noted that workplaces that undertook mitigation protocols, including masking, social distancing, screening, improving airflow, actually went from being less safe to the rest of the community, actually more safe, as in more safe than your home, as in more safe than lockdowns.
Wow.
Which is really interesting.
That is interesting.
Because there will be another pandemic.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And if you trust this study, it's saying rather than doing a lockdown next time and having all the problems with that, just from beginning go full mitigation everywhere.
Right.
And you'll be better off.
Okay.
But anyway, which was interesting. Another study gave me the feeling they're running out of things to study because there's a Dutch study which...
As an academic, I completely understand that. Yes.
Yeah. In Holland, they've trained bees to recognise coronavirus. Now, that might have been useful a year ago, but, now there's a lot of tests. There's a lot of tests. And even if it works, what do you do with the bees after they've sensed COVID on that person? It's an interesting I don't know why. Why would you test it? Why would you try that out? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the bees? Of all the animals.
Limited edition honey.
If it's a dog or a cat or something, yeah, sure. They can, but the bee, how are they going to signify it? All they do is sting. They don't talk. Anyway.
Like honey.
So you think if they recognise that you have COVID, they make honey on your face.
Okay.
Fair enough. Dave, talk about new regulations.
Well, actually, I just want to, given that we are talking about obscure COVID studies, I want to mention mine.
Yes.
Now, some sharp-eyed peppers might remember a few weeks ago. Suddenly there was just this bit that was cut.
It was a very dodgy edit. I did my best.
With no explanation whatsoever. Yeah. That was because I had gone off a bit too enthusiastically about this embargoed research.
And just to be clear, I didn't ask for this embargoed
research.
No. You forced it on the podcast and then cut it out.
I forced it on the podcast, then afterwards texted my co-author and said, should I have said that? And I'm like, no. Okay, so a study by David Smith, Katie Atwell and Joanna Evers, which has been published in the journal Politics, explains.
Do we have a link? Is it in the homework?
We can put it in the home. I'll put in a link to my article in the conversation about it because unfortunately, because academic journal publishing is a ridiculous racket, this is actually paywalled. Anyway, so we did a survey of Australians last year about how they would feel about what was then a prospective coronavirus vaccine, but also about prospective mandates around a coronavirus vaccine. Now, I understand, this is last year, lots happened since then, but there actually isn't really any other survey data about this subject, with a couple of exceptions, which I will mention. The other advantage of this study was that we were resampling a survey that we had talked to in 2017 about vaccines generally, this is before coronavirus had been heard of, and vaccine mandates. Now, we found, unsurprisingly, Australians are more hesitant around a coronavirus vaccine than they are around vaccines normally. That's fine. That's in line with the rest of the world. What we did discover that was unusual was about how Australians feel about COVID-19 vaccine mandates, because we asked, would you support the government making a COVID-19 vaccine a requirement for activities such as work, travel and study? 66% of our sample said, yes, I will definitely take the vaccine when it comes along. And it's like 25% maybe.
Yeah.
It's 9% no. So that's
a bit better than America.
Standard.
Yeah.
But when we asked them, would you support making the vaccine a requirement? 73% of them said yes. Australians. We fucking love making things compulsory.
So more people
yes.
than said they were definitely going to get it. Wanted
Absolutely.
to be forced
we are
to
just
get
the
it.
most rule-following country
Okay.
on earth. We want rules enforcing things that we don't even want in a lot of cases. So anyway, that's
a good study.
That's vaccine study quarter. I think in the original podcast, I think I talked about this even more enthusiastically, but yes, that unfortunately was cut. Okay, so I was talking about research that was embargoed at the time.
And if you're wondering why we just had a massive cut and cut back in, it's because Dave then texted me after this podcast and said, please cut that again.
It is out in the world.
Dave, talk to us about the new guidelines from the
CDC.
CDC.
So quite surprisingly, last Thursday, the CDC sprung this new revised guideline. Apparently, they'd only told Biden about it the night before. So this was not done in consultation with the White House. This actually reflects the fact that the Biden White House has given the CDC a huge amount of authority in stark contrast to the Trump administration. So what they said was, yes, fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks because they are not only at no risk of infection themselves, they're at no risk of infecting others. Okay, makes sense. But, okay, so there are two obvious potential consequences from this. And the debate around this has basically raged over which one of these is more likely. The political aim of this is potentially to get more people vaccinated, right? So this is
to give them incentive.
It's a major incentive given what the mask has represented and how genuinely inconvenient and unpleasant a lot of people find it. This is like a great incentive, potentially. I mean, states are trying all kinds of other things at the moment. There's New Jersey's a beer and a shot program.
Yes.
Where
Ohio's giving away $1 million a week.
Yes. Ohio's actually instituted a new state lottery.
And if you're under 18,
they
just give you 2 years tuition at an Ohio university.
Are they funding this with CARES Act money?
Yeah.
It's a great
idea.
It's a great idea. Anyway, so all kinds of incentives, but this could actually be one that gets people over the line. But okay, first of all, we don't know that it will. This is the sort of thing where you don't know until it actually happens. And if it doesn't, this could potentially spell the end of every mask mandate in America, effectively, because you have no way of telling who has been vaccinated and who hasn't. So who is legitimately not wearing a mask and who's just not wearing one because they don't feel like it. Of course, there have been proposals for vaccine passports, which would be a sort of certification that you have in order to...
It's too late.
First of all, it's too late. Second, there's been a lot of political resistance to that. Like, as you pointed out a few weeks ago, it could have become a major sort of culture war issue.
The Republicans were looking for it.
Oh, they were they were gunning for that to be a culture war issue. So, as it stands at the moment, I mean, retailers and other places of business have had enough trouble trying to get people to wear masks, even when there were guidelines in place. Now that the CDC has changed those unilaterally, that's even going to be harder to enforce. So I think the jury is well and truly out on this one. I'm a little bit more on the pessimistic side.
And there's a perfect example where right now in Congress about the way this works. So you've got 10 Republicans are refusing to follow the mask mandate in the House.
Yeah.
And they're refusing to say whether they've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, if you get vaccinated, you can take the mask off.
Yes, yeah.
But they won't say it.
No.
And they're just being dicks.
Real right to privacy issue, that one.
It's
Fourth, Fifth, and Ninth Amendments of the Constitution.
But you can see how if people want to be difficult,
yes,
it just creates a situation.
Given
where
that there's
it's
one
not
party
worth it.
devoted to trying to be difficult.
It just creates a situation. I feel sorry for the CDC a little bit actually, because they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. People are tugging all kinds of directions, and the CDC is basically the voice of the pandemic.
Yes,
which no one likes very much.
No.
And they're being extremely unreasonable to them, and they're kind of they're just copying a lot of crap. I was going to say that with the vaccine thing, because I've got a few things here, I'm running out of time.
Yes.
Well, the major problem, actually, I said this on the show, but I'll say it here anyway because it's really interesting. The main reason why the epidemiologists are freaking out, is because there was a poll from New York Times just last week asking what percentage of them when they felt that they could stop wearing masks in mixed company as far as vaccines go. Right? If they're vaccinated. And 52% of epidemiologists said they expected to be wearing masks for more than a year. 81% said at least a year.
Yeah.
And that was a week ago.
Yeah.
And now they're being told by CDC, well, take your mask off. So you can see why they're freaking out. But Harry Anton, this is a few weeks back, but this is just really important stuff, made a very interesting distinguishment for me because we talk about vaccine hesitant.
That's distinction, Jay.
Distinction, sorry. I'm racing in my head. I'm trying to beat the great
filter. I wouldn't have
filter.
normally connected you, but distinction is such a nice word.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's very distinction.
Yes.
We talk about vaccine hesitant as if it means vaccine resistant, as if it means.
I don't use the term vaccine hesitant in that way.
A lot of people do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's when you've got yes, no, maybe. Vaccine hesitant includes the maybes.
Yeah,
which is always a much bigger group than the no.
Exactly. He's distinguishing between vaccine hesitant and vaccine resistant.
Yes.
In the Kaiser poll, vaccine hesitant people who are just saying maybe I'll wait and see whatever. 20% of them were Republicans, with an additional 19% being Republican-leaning independents. So that's 39%.
Yeah.
Democrats were 41%, independents were 20%. So 61% of them were not Republicans. We've been acting like it's Republicans are all the vaccine-hesitant people. No, they're the vaccine-resistant people.
Yes, yeah.
55% of the vaccine-resistant people are Republicans or Republican-leaning. Okay?
Yes.
21% of them are Democrats or Democrat-leaning. People who are not registered to vote are actually the most likely to be in that hesitant category.
Right, yes.
The wait-and-see category, right?
Yep.
In Monmouth poll, 34% of people who were not registered to vote said they wanted to see how it goes before they get a vaccine.
Yep.
10% of registered voters said the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually the independents and the not registered people, the people who aren't political.
Yep.
The reason this is important is because possibly the best thing you can do to crack that market. Actually, there's two things based on polls. One is there's a Kaiser poll which asked unvaccinated people whether they would be more likely to get vaccinated if they got paid time off to get vaccinated and to overcome the effects.
Yes.
28% of them said yes, the unvaccinated people.
Yep.
54% of the Hispanic people who were unvaccinated said yes.
Okay, yes.
And you can see how that's working, right?
Yep.
They've got jobs where they can't take time off.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that is a very simple way to get more people vaccinated.
There you go.
Like, you don't need to be getting Trump to do public health announcements. Like, that is an easy way. And an even easier way is if you get Pfizer to a Moderna to apply for full approval rather than emergency approval, which is what they got at the moment, and Pfizer are doing this right now.
Yep.
If the vaccine's approved, you know what they can do?
What
they can advertise.
Ah.
That's the easy way. Just advertise.
Yeah.
You can do that in America and in New Zealand, strangely enough. Apparently New Zealand's the only other country in the world you can advertise pharmaceuticals. Yeah. But anyway, that could be the solution.
Yeah.
Just get a permanent approval and advertise.
Put them in Happy Meals.
Yeah. Anyway, so that to me was an important thing. And we're out of time. I'm going to leave you with one thought, which was in terms of changing minds.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if you're interested in changing people's minds generally, go to Watch Play America, the clip of Bill de Blasio I had at the end, because it's an amazing clip. I would play here. In fact, I will play. I'm going to finish off the podcast by playing it because it's just hilarious.
Yep.
It's nightmare stuff. But that aside, I'm going to put an article in the homework, in the blurb, about changing minds. I'm going to read you just a little bit from it to go out, because I think it sounds kind of obvious, but we just don't think about this enough. And I think it's worth noting. I'm quoting from the article. First, it says, people generally try to avoid changing their minds on big subjects whenever they can. Psychologically, it can feel humiliating, disorienting, and doubt-inducing in other areas of life. If I'm wrong about this, what else am I wrong about? As a result, it can radically diminish one's confidence and sense of self. If people have to choose between changing their mind on something that matters and preserving their sense of self, they will always dig their heels in. That's why it's so important, in the words of Sun Tzu, to build a golden bridge for your opponent to retreat across when arguing over matters of substance. You have to express your point of view in such a way that allows your interlocutor to be persuaded without losing face or ceding status. There must be a way for them to climb down from their position while retaining their dignity. Then goes on to say, productive debate depends on the willingness of both sides to attribute benign motives to their interlocutors. You have to start from a point of agreement that there's some shared vision of the good that you're both aiming at, even if you think your opponent's vision of it is refracted and obscured to the point of error, while your own is much closer to the mark. And it concludes with, quote, "We are not enemies but friends. We must not be enemies. We all must convince our political adversaries that this proposition is true with actions as well as words before we can expect to convince them of anything else." And obviously the point of it is that this does not happen at all today. And I think sounds obvious, but I think it's worth noting because it doesn't happen anymore.
That's right.
And so have a look at the article in the
All right.
blurb. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week.
Okay. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? These delicious fries? Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this? If this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination. I'm getting a very good feeling about vaccination right this moment.